Ashley.
And we're Self-Care.
So, today we will be talking about The Woman by Kristin Hannah. But before we dive into that, join us next week for Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood.
Alright. So, it's been a while. Let's dive in.
I know.
So, The Woman by Kristin Hannah. So, I think first off, let's talk about what we rated it.
Okay. I gave it I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars.
I gave it 5 stars.
I think so. Okay. I really enjoyed this book.
This book is a little bit different than like the things we've been reading normally. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that it's heavy on the romance. There's obviously romance aspects, but it just made me feel things. Yeah. And I loved that.
I think I was really surprised because, I was expecting to be wowed just because it has such high ratings, but I'm not really into historical fictions and stuff, and it just really blew me away, and like I just felt for the character, and it had me crying, and I was just like, wow.
This was the first historical fiction that I read and was 5 stars. Yeah,
definitely.
And I even went into the book thinking, I've got to rate it differently than I would rate a romance. And I honestly didn't even think about anything while I was reading it. I just thought about how great the book was, so I was very pleased with that.
Yeah, me too.
So diving into the characters a little bit, so let's talk about when the party for her brother.
The beginning of the book, the party. Finley is Frankie's mom. Yes, Frankie.
Yeah, Frankie.
Yeah, Frankie.
Yeah.
It's just weird to say Frankie because that's like a boy. In the starting out, she just kind of felt like she didn't belong at the party, and she was just like hiding in her house, and that's when she met Rye in her dad's office looking at the wall of heroes.
And she kind of knew Rye because he was Finley's friend.
I think that was his best friend.
Yeah.
I think that's what they said.
I think they were best friends, but she didn't know him on a deep personal level.
Yeah, and it was, what is it? I think they went to, was it just the Air Force that they were in?
The Naval Academy.
The Naval.
Yeah, they went to the Naval Academy together because they're a Navy, right?
Yeah, they're Navy.
They're a Navy town.
All their family was Navy.
Yeah. And so they end up meeting up and looking at the Wall of Heroes, and then they go and talk on the sand outside. Actually, no. Was that him? Because I think she went out on the sand, and then her brother came and sat next to her.
Yeah, her brother did.
So basically, during this party, she's just feeling like she just doesn't know what her place is, where she's supposed to go. And Rye ends up saying something to her, saying women can be heroes too.
And that kind of just stuck with her, and she got it in her head that she could make a change too. Yeah. So she wanted to sign up and go to war. She had just graduated nursing school, and she'd started a job. And at this job, she wasn't really doing much nursing. She was doing lots of CNA work that we would call today. And she just realized that she wanted to do more. So she tried to sign up for the Navy Nursing Corps. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah. And then she tried to sign up for the Marine Nursing Corps. They both said no, you would be stateside for 2 years, and her goal was to go and be with Finley in Vietnam. So she ends up going to the Army, who obviously is more desperate than the other two, and they're like, yep, we'll ship you out. No problem.
No problem.
But I thought it was kind of shitty how they kind of lied and was like, yeah, you'll get to see him, and this and that. I was like, okay, if she gets to see him, it's because he's blown off.
Yeah, I think that was kind of...
Yeah, that was very...
They gave her false hope on that one, but they were so short for nurses. I think they were just ready for anything. So she went to base camp.
Well, before that, she told her parents about it, and her parents were not happy whatsoever, especially her dad, saying that women don't do that, and just being kind of really negative about it, and about her trying to make a change.
Basically, both her parents thought it was embarrassing. Yeah. So she goes to base camp. She flies through base camp, pretty much no issues, I feel like. And then she actually gets shipped out to Vietnam, and it's a whole new world. So that was crazy. And then we get to meet Barb and Ethel.
Before all that, you're forgetting...
What am I forgetting?
When Finley died.
Oh, yeah. Did he die before she ever went to camp?
No, yeah. She died remember, because she opened the door. I don't know if it had been a couple of days since she told her parents, or
It was right after she enlisted.
Right that same day, or I don't know when, but it was like
close.
around that time. And she opened the door and she saw the Navy, like, men, like, dressed up, you know, in their uniforms and stuff, and holding the flag, and she instantly knew.
I totally forgot that was before she ever went to be like.
No, that was way before. Because then she was like, well,
maybe I shouldn't.
What am I gonna do? No, well, she had already enlisted.
Yeah.
Like, there's no backing
her
out.
parents told her not to go.
Yeah, but she had already enlisted.
Yeah, so she's like, that's it. That's
like, there's literally no going back.
Yeah. I forgot.
That really, I was not. I mean, I kind of was like, wait, what if her brother dies? But I thought like she would already be out there.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't expect like that to happen.
Oh, that's wild. I totally forgot about that.
I literally was like so shocked. I wanted to cry because I was like, fuck.
That is such a wild like way to start the book.
Yeah, because it was at the very beginning. Since then, I was like, oh shit, like I was hugged.
Yeah, that's a crazy way to start the book. I totally forgot about that because that's not the craziest thing that happened.
No, I know. It just keeps getting worse.
I know, poor girl.
That stuck to me. I was like, damn.
That is rough.
Just
the whole reason she enlisted. Well, not the whole reason.
Well, basically,
a lot of it.
A big part of it. And for that, her parents were just kind of like, well, they saw one child go.
Yeah.
And they didn't want her to go even more because they didn't want anything to happen to her. Yeah.
Wild. I can't believe that I forgot that happened.
Yeah, I know.
She ever went
that was
to
such a big part.
Like, I remember he died, but I guess that part didn't stick with me. But, so then.
You're like, wait, what?
After all that, she meets Barb and Ethel at her first hospital. So Ethel is immediately, like, nice and welcoming, and Barb is obviously not.
Yeah.
Which
it's just her personality.
And being a black woman in the nurse corps in the army, I'm sure she just had heard and seen it all.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of her personality. So at first I was kind of like, ooh.
Why's she gonna be rude?
Yeah, like this one's not gonna be very nice. But can you believe that first day she is like part of that huge trauma?
No, I mean that was pretty scary. And once they saw her go into that trauma, I mean they were like, nope, you're going to the neuro floor.
Exactly. I mean, we're in surgery, so our first day in surgery, like, I definitely could not have handled that.
I mean, my first day, like, as a student in surgery, was doing an appy. Yeah. And I remember because I was like, it was like a lap appy, and I was like, oh, I'm like Grey's Anatomy, just like because their first surgery was an appy. Yes. And I was like, oh, I'm following in their footsteps.
I love it. No, I definitely just cut off a lot of toes in the beginning.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean,
And that hooked you? You're like, I want to keep
like, this is it. No, I just couldn't imagine being in a massive trauma very first day. And really,
even now, I think it would still kind of scare me.
I think, well,
that type of trauma.
That type of trauma, yes.
That is crazy to be seeing, like, blown off body parts. That type of trauma is...
That is wild.
That's severe. Like, the type of trauma that we deal through is, like, nowhere completely close to
absolutely. That was definitely different than anything we've ever seen. But I just couldn't imagine.
No.
So, I do think that the neuro corps was good for her. Mm-hmm. So, the first night, they take her to, I guess it's like a bar.
Oh, their own little...
Yeah, it's...
They used to call it a specific
The VW... I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. But they had their own little party place.
Yeah. Where all of the soldiers and pretty much everyone meets up. And so they took her out for her first day. And that's when she meets Jamie.
I instantly really liked him. But the fact that... I mean, I really liked him up until I found out that he was married.
Yes.
With a wife and kid. But I mean, at least he didn't shy away from it. Like,
no, he was very upfront about it.
I am married and I do have this. But I don't know, I'm just, red flag, he was like, we are at war and this and that. Like, anything can happen, yes, but I don't think that's like an excuse to cheat.
Absolutely.
I think that's just like every guy's excuse.
And he's like, she got pregnant and we got married and I don't love her. Well, so what? I mean, but, so I immediately disliked Jamie in the beginning because of that.
But as, like, you keep reading, and eventually, whenever she got back into surgery because of Barb and Ethel, they were like, come on, we'll take you under our wing, and they showed her pretty much everything, and she ended up being really good at it, and she worked with Jamie quite a lot.
Yeah.
And Jamie trusted her a lot, like, they worked together every single day, and like this and that. And then I was like, oh wow, like, I actually really like him now. so sweet.
And so, if y'all know anything about surgery, now we have, at least where we work, we have mostly like scrub techs and FAs, which are an advanced scrub tech, and then we have nurses. We don't have a whole lot of scrub nurses.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't know that she was going to be like scrubbing.
I kind of did, just because I feel like I kind of knew that back in the day they didn't really have techs.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I imagined that they'd be doing.
I guess in my head, I imagined that she would be like the trauma nurse that takes them to surgery, and then like there would be another team. So that was pretty cool, especially when she started like closing on her own. And
Actually, like doing the procedure, like because something more severe would come in, he would be like, "You're on your own. Like you got to do this," and she'd just be like like actually having to do the surgery part in the procedure. And so that was kind of crazy to hear about, because I can't imagine like doing that nowadays, because like that would be like lawsuits, like
no joke,
whole type of stuff, like
joke.
that would be crazy. But I just remember this one thing, but like at the beginning of the book, or not the beginning, but whenever she first started getting there, I remembered when they told her like you need to be careful with the guys because they will grab you and like kind of like they will be abusive to you.
And they said never go anywhere by yourself.
Yeah, especially during the night. And I was like, because these soldiers will drink, and then I was like, that's kind of crazy.
That was crazy. Yeah. And then, so that's when her and Jamie started actually becoming
because he would like
best
protect
friends.
her.
Yeah, because he was out, sitting, thinking about his day, and he said, you have nothing to fear from me. And so then they kind of started building this relationship. And I did love, obviously they were in love with each other.
Yeah.
But I did love that she kept a strong boundary.
And I really liked her at that point, because I was like, wow, she's super true to herself and strong. And she's not just going to go with this guy like she loves, but because he's like married and stuff like that. So I was like, wow. I was like really rooting for her at that point.
And I think, had she already become a surgical nurse, or was she, when she started doing the outreach? I think it was before.
No, like whenever they would drive.
Yeah.
No, I think she had already joined.
She had?
Yeah.
Because I think her first trip out is when they ended up finding that little girl with the mangled hand, and they had to cut it off.
Oh, you're
So right. I think that's when it started. Barb saw her she didn't see her do that, but she was there for that, and Barb was like, no, you're in surgery now.
Yeah.
Because Barb is a surgical nurse. Now, their other friend, I'm blanking on her name, Ethel, she was the trauma nurse in the ER, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Barb saw her do that, and that's when Barb was like, you're coming to surgery. And Jamie wanted her on his team.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that all started. But the little outreach programs were when they went into the town and they took care of the people on like their off days or slow days.
The Vietnam,
the Vietnamese.
Yeah.
So Ethel, I feel like in the beginning was my favorite, as far as her friends. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so supportive. I love her so much. But then she kind of became a background character.
Well, she kind of did. Well, because she left. She was the first one to leave.
True, she was the first one to leave, and that was pretty quick in the book. She left and went back home. And so she kind of became a background character. Obviously, they still wrote, and she was still a part of it. But Barb became
closer to her. Well, because they signed on for another year together.
Yeah. Well, and then Barb got her date of, they call it like DOA, I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's when they're leaving. And that is when she got that, and then Frankie got her transfer order to the middle of the fighting. And so Barb just said, I'll transfer with you. Like, even if I have an expiration date, like, they're not going to say no.
Yeah.
So, that is after Jamie, right?
Yeah. Going back to Jamie.
Yeah.
So, he got his, letter that he would,
leaving.
he had finished his tour. And that before that, I think it was because he got, after a certain couple of months, you get, this leave.
Yes.
And so he was going to go visit his wife for a week out.
In Hawaii.
Yeah, whatever location. And so I think it was on his way back.
Yes. So he did get his letter that he was leaving. And it was after Ethel left. Yeah. And then he went to go have his time off, his week.
I think it was before Ethel left.
Was it?
I think it was.
Oh, maybe it was, because maybe she was the trauma nurse that brought him in.
I don't know, but I feel like it was before Ethel left, because they were like, she was like, how am I gonna leave you? Like this.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So, anyways, they go for a week, and he wants her to go with him, and she's like, no, like, this is my boundary. Have fun with your wife. I'll see you in a week. And that's when he tells her that he loves her. He's like, I know I shouldn't, but I love you. And she didn't say it back. Well, and immediately she's like, maybe I should have said it back. This is war. Well, he comes back a week later, and instead of coming back whole, his plane had been bombed. So she saw him, and they shipped him out. She didn't know if he was going to live or die, and she never knew.
Well, because it was so traumatic, because, like, as his helicopter was leaving, like, he was coding. Yeah. Like, that was crazy.
And he'd already coded a million times on the way there.
And she was like, there's no way. And so instantly, in her, like, she told herself that he had passed. Yeah. Like, instantly.
And she did have faith in him, because, so, on one of her first trips, a little boy gave her this polished rock that he found, and she'd held it in her pocket. And so she wrote...
That was that guy. I mean, the little kid that... With the kid... I mean, the girl.
Oh, yes.
The
with
girl.
His sister when they cut her hand off because it was all mangled. That's when he gave her that rock.
That was his sister that she went and helped. And so he was thankful and gave her a little rock.
And so she wrote...
kept on it.
Do you remember what she wrote on it? It was something like live. And then on the other side it said McGrath.
Something like inspiring.
Yeah, but she wrote something inspiring and wrote her name on the back, McGrath. And then she put it in his pocket.
Yeah, and Jamie's.
And so she had hope that he would live, but she also was like, the reality of this is he might not live. And she'll never know because she's not his wife.
Yeah, and she wanted to reach out and ask about him, but at the same time, she was like, it's not my place.
Yeah, like,
and
what's
I
appropriate.
really respected her for that. Like, I was like, wow, that's crazy. The growth. And she was so young to be doing, like, all that.
I know. Isn't that wild?
And then she... downhill. But
But so this has all happened. She's getting transferred to the middle of fighting. They get there. First day there. I mean,
her and Barb.
It's a war zone,
and it's just way worse than where they originally were.
Yeah, it's worse conditions, like where they're sleeping and staying.
Oh,
worse.
Their cots are like
molded because of all the wet.
Animal like.
Yeah, there's rat. There were rats in the first place, but there's rats here.
And it's just awful.
I mean, it's just bad. It's bad all the way around. And obviously, like, they try to make it better. They do little parties and things. And so
what do you think about that? Like,
the little parties?
Yeah, like working all day and then going to the party, like, and drinking all night. And and smoking. And I think they smoked weed, didn't they? Yeah.
I don't think she smoked weed a lot.
Yeah.
But I think Barb did.
Just on rough days and stuff like that. I feel like
so
that's
wild
just kind of crazy. Because then, like, I feel like when you go back to work, like, a couple hours later, like, it still has to be in your system. Yeah. You know?
I just think you do what you gotta do to get through. And obviously by now we've known that, like, some sketch things are happening. She realizes that maybe the U.S. isn't totally the good guys because they're gassing, like, innocent people in, villages that don't even have soldiers in them. So I think that they're having a whole bunch of, like, feelings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that I could function that way.
Do you think that Barb ever got with other guys while she was there? I feel like they didn't really talk a lot about that.
The only thing they talked about is the air crew. What were they called? I can't remember.
They had this.
They had a name.
Yeah, and honestly, what do you think of whenever they would, like, have their off days and they would, like, go to the beach?
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah.
And
that was
when
scary.
she got in the water,
and
you're not even supposed to drink the water, how do you, like, face plant skiing behind a boat in the water without drinking it?
Yeah.
That was my thing. I was like, girl. And then they kind of, like, scanned the water and they're like, oh, it looks like it's fine, but there's, like, snakes and stuff. I don't know.
It's like
that would have been my thing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
That was crazy. And then
at that point, she had already met Ryan.
She knew he was there.
Yeah, she knew he was there. because she had seen him around.
Yeah, because he was the commanding officer of Coyote, who was
Coyote,
part of the
yeah.
pack. I loved Coyote.
I kind of wanted her to give him a chance. Like, low-key, I was kind of rooting for him because he was so nice.
And such a baby.
And he really wanted to treat her right, though.
Yeah,
he really did.
He seemed so much younger than her, but I know
I know that they were the same age. Like,
Yeah.
they had to be. She was just, like, so mature for her age.
I just feel like he was so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Coyote's friend was Barb's guy, I think.
I think that's true. I just feel like they didn't really say much about it.
Well, and they just ended whenever Barb left.
Yeah.
I think it was very casual.
I just wanted to hear more about Barb's. I think, if anything, I wish we would have had a little bit more of, like, Barb's experience.
I agree.
Just because she had already been there, she had already seen so much, so I would have liked to hear a little bit more from her.
Part of me wishes that I had Barb's point of view, but I was so wrecked from Frankie's point of view that I don't know if I wanted
it. Would have killed.
I don't know. I think it would have been one too many point of views. But yeah, I agree.
We only had hers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice just to have.
Maybe yeah. Maybe a point of view from Barb or.
I think I'm just a fan of like a book with multiple point of views.
Yeah, we've been reading a lot.
Yeah, multiple point of views.
So definitely makes sense. But yeah, I definitely loved Coyote. I think he was cute. Mm-hmm. And then when Rye really came into the picture was when they had their. I don't think it was like a week off. What did they do? It was like. Well, they had like 2 nights off, and so they flew to a major city in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And they stayed in a hotel. They went to a party. It was all with Coyote and his friend.
Mm-hmm. And like she was, I guess they danced. Her and Rye danced together and stuff like this. And he kind of hinted that he was like interested in her and kind of wanted to take her back to the hotel and this and that. And she was like, "Aren't you married or like this and that?"
Because he was engaged.
Yeah, he was engaged. And he was like, "I am, but I don't love her," and this and that. And she was like, "No, well, I can't do that, you know, this and that." And eventually, she ended up getting like I think it was at least a couple weeks later, she ended up getting like really burnt out. And he had kind of gone behind her back and like told them like that she needs that week off.
Rest and recovery.
Yeah, and so they kind of made her go take a week off. Where did they send her?
They sent her to Hawaii.
And so she kind of took a week off, and guess who's there?
Yeah.
Rye.
Surprise.
I was surprised.
So that was after Barb left.
Yeah, that was after Barb left.
And she thought Barb did it. And Barb never said she didn't do it. She was just like, "You need to rest."
Yeah.
Everyone gets burnt out. And then she gets there, and there's Rye.
Yeah.
And he's actually the one
that had done it. And she sees him, and she's like, "Well, I don't want to have dinner with you, this and that." Yeah. And he's like, "Well, I broke off the engagement."
I believed him.
I
just
really
want you to know.
I was so like into the book. I believed every single.
I did too. I believed everything he said. Yeah. And then obviously they spent a whole week together. Mm-hmm. And she, I believe, already had her orders to leave.
She did. He did too, and his were earlier. No, hers.
They were pretty close. It was like a month apart. Yeah. But then they signed up again for another year together.
Well, she only did 2 years.
But so I'm pretty sure she signed up.
So she didn't. Okay, so when
because she did 2 tours.
2 tours.
So she signed up for another tour.
Yeah, with him though, with both of the girls gone.
Yeah.
So I think the only one that. So at first, Barb redid her tour, but it was still like.
I don't think so. I think Barb she didn't redo it. She just ended the tour
with her. Oh, okay.
And so then her and Rye got together, and she told him. She said, "I'm sorry, I'm not finished here." Yeah. And so he said, "Well, then I'm not either."
Well, what he said stuck with me.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, he said, "I can't leave my girl here," and I was like, "Oh." You know, I even highlighted that on my Kindle. And, like, I highlighted it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
I loved him so much.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about Jamie.
Well,
I totally forgot
because I really like Jamie, but after that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love them together, this and that." And so whenever it just goes on like they had such a good relationship that entire year. Like even when she had to she didn't see him for like a month at a time or stuff like that, she would get
satellite phone him. Yeah.
And like he would be like, you know, like all sweet talk, this and that.
And she
just,
had
like, all their moments.
I remember she had a really bad night. So she satellite phoned him or radioed him, and she's like, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I just, you know, like had a bad night, whatever. He's like, okay. So she thinks it's done, and then he shows up.
Yeah, he showed up like in the middle of the night. And like slept in her cottage with her.
I loved it so much.
I really loved him.
And I loved him so much. And then she ended up going home because her second tour was over. She was not going to re-sign. She's already having a really hard time, just with everything. And so, kind of like coming off Rye for a minute, talking about her coming home. So obviously she's in her full like dress uniform because she has to travel that way. She's in her dress uniform. She finally makes it home. She gets off the plane and she's immediately like spit on.
Yeah.
And everyone doesn't, you know, they dislike her. They called her a baby killer. All these things, and she was expecting people to be
like cheering
and like World War II.
How she left. Like they had so much love for her brother and like all the guys for going off to war and stuff. And
obviously, so during her time in the war, she was reading the papers that they were sending to the United States, and she obviously knew that they were missing information. They weren't, saying everything, and she'd been seeing pieces missing. So sometimes in her letters to her parents, she would tell them like real things.
Yeah.
And so she gets home and she realizes that nobody cares. Everybody's upset. They don't support the war. They spit on her. These two Marines end up like getting her bags and walking her to her taxi.
I think so.
And then she gets home, and when she gets home, her mom's like, "You should have called." And I'm like, "What?
Why are they being
what is happening?" And her dad was upset and mad and
like not even happy she's home, and she's been gone for 2 years.
Yeah, and then she gives him the picture of her, Ethel, and Barb for the hero wall. And he totally just ignores her because she's not, man, so she can't go on the hero wall.
I really disliked him for a big part of the book.
That was so hard for me. And at this point, her and Rye were engaged. They thought.
We did. Wait, before we get into this, though, I just remembered while she was still on tour, like a big thing was, one of her surgeries, whenever that guy got shot in his butt.
Oh, yeah?
And then, like, later, a couple weeks later, he came back, and, like, it was just his body, because, like, everything else had been blown off, and he was already in the morgue, and he was just crying, because they just put him in the morgue.
Yeah.
And so she just goes and, like, holds his hand.
And sits with him.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what she called Rye.
I think so, but, oh my gosh,
yeah,
that part
was so
really
hard.
got me.
And she knew him.
Yeah, and because she remembered him, and he remembered her, because he had asked her, like, whenever he got shot in the butt to take a picture with him. So and like so many people asked her that, which I thought was crazy. Take a picture with me so I can show it to my parents.
Yeah, and that comes back a little bit later. We can talk about it in a sec about like the families of these kids, because they were kids. I mean, they were super young.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was heartbreaking. But where were we? Sorry. No, it's okay.
With her coming home.
Oh yeah. And the parents were upset. And then her and Rye were engaged. Did she tell her parents she was engaged? I don't know.
She didn't even tell them about Rye yet.
Yeah, because she was waiting for him to come home. Because he was only 3 months behind her.
No, it was a month.
Was it just a month?
It was a month.
Oh, I thought it was at least 3.
And just because it was like, I think it was like a month and a half.
Yeah.
And like closer to the date, she drove up to where he was from, which I don't think it was like far.
It wasn't
away.
far.
It was like less than an hour.
I want to say they called it like the Heights or something. It was like a lower income area.
And
to find his dad.
I think he had a tire shop or a car shop.
He used to.
Yeah.
But it was like.
Oh, he was still sitting in there.
Yeah, he was in there.
And so she is like, "Hi, my name," or like, "Hi, I am engaged to your son," like this and that, and I want to have a welcome home party. And he's like, "I know exactly who you are, Missy."
Yeah.
But in my head, I was like, "That's weird." But I didn't grasp that he said Missy, like as in a name.
I just thought he was saying Missy.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh, like he's upset. And then he said, they came, brought me a flag,
No, that letter. They faxed him a letter.
Oh, that's right. The telegram.
Yeah.
Or telegraph or whatever. Yeah, they didn't bring him anything. They said he was dead. His plane had been shot down. And that's how she found out.
And that was so, like,
this was the beginning of her spiral.
Yeah. That was so crazy because I was like, wow.
Well, and I still loved him at this point, so I was very wrecked.
I was too, because I was like, this girl cannot catch a break. Like, everybody has to die.
Yeah.
And
all of her people have to die. So this is when she starts her spiral. She kind of starts drinking super heavily, which she'd always been drinking. I feel like she started drinking pretty heavy.
Yeah, and smoking.
And smoking in the war.
Yeah.
But then she starts drinking at home, going through like a bottle of gin a night.
Like sleeping all day, not doing anything. And honestly, at this point, I kind of liked her mom because she called her two best friends.
Yeah. And so the two best friends show up and they're like, well, what do you still have? And she's like, nursing. So she gets her job at a hospital. Obviously, not a surgical job. And they didn't count her experience in the Army at all. So basically, she was back to doing CNA work.
Well, yeah, she wanted to do surgery. And they didn't want to.
And they were like, no, only advanced nurses can do that. So she's on a I believe she's on a neuro floor again. Some sort of like, you know, like med-surg kind of thing. And just doing CNA stuff and taking vitals, which was super hard for her. And so,
do you remember that one incident, or was this like later in the book?
I think it was later when she performed I think that was later after that was after her mom's stroke. So I believe she's doing CNA work for a while, and then what happens? What's the tipping point that sends her to Virginia?
Well, it's because, after a while, I mean, she just keeps getting hate on, and she's going through a lot of stuff, and she keeps asking for help, like, to go to the, like,
She went to the VA, because she realized she has problems, and she's, because she's been told about, like this group for Vietnam veterans, and they said, no, there was no women in the war. And she's heard this several times now, and she keeps saying, I highlighted it a couple times because she kept saying, like, I was there. She just felt like nobody talked about women in the war, like at the nurses and stuff. So she keeps getting turned away. And finally, I think she just kind of like hit her breaking point. She crashed her car because she got drunk.
Well, I think, is this before or after the other guy?
I think it's before.
Because
so she crashed her car because she's drunk. Her parents are like, what are we going to do with you? All this stuff. And she ends up calling her friends, and that's when they move to Ethel's farm. And then they're on Ethel's farm.
Oh, and she meets the guy after the stroke.
Yeah, she meets the guy after the stroke.
Okay.
Yeah, so she moves to, where's Ethel's farm again? Virginia? I think it is.
Probably.
I think it's Virginia, something like that. But she goes and she lives on the farm with Ethel.
And Barb.
She moves into
the little white cottage.
Yeah. And Barb was having trouble anyways. Her brother was killed.
Yeah.
Because he was protesting the war. And so he was killed, and she was kind of lost her place too. So both Barb and Frankie moved to Ethel's farmhouse, and they redid the
whole cottage.
Yeah, they redid the whole cottage. I think it's like the farmhand house. But they redid it together. They learned how to do it. It was pretty therapeutic for her. She started riding horses. She really just coming into her own.
Yeah, she had a good life.
She became a bartender, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she became a bartender.
And then that's when Barb started trying to get her to go to the protest.
Yeah, Veterans Against the War. And so she started doing that kind of stuff. And and you know what? Is that where she met Henry at the first protest? I think it is. She and Barb went to Washington, D.C.
She saw him again back at home at the mall.
Yeah, so she and Barb went to Washington, D.C. They ended up getting separated. She met this guy. They met at the hotel. She was waiting for Barb to come sit with her for a drink. And so he was sitting with her talking, and when Barb got there, Henry left. So that's when we first meet Henry, who, honestly, I didn't think anything of in the beginning.
Yeah, I thought he was alright. I just didn't think that she didn't really talk much about him, in a good way, so I felt like she wasn't really interested, so that made me, not really
disinterested. Yeah. And I think that Barb really found her outlet with the Veterans Against the War, Vets Against the War. It's like VVAW, something like that. But I think it just brought up a lot of PTSD for Frankie, and so it was harder for her. So I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right. So she wasn't sure she loved that idea, but she heard about these Navy wives that are getting together, trying to bring prisoners of war home.
That's when she was back home, though.
No, it wasn't, because she went to a dinner. She made Barb go with her.
Oh, that's true.
She went to a dinner, and she met a woman who knew her mother, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I heard about her stroke. I know that's so terrible."
True.
And that's when Frankie found out that she'd had a stroke, and that's when she had to go home.
She went home.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that her dad didn't even try to.
Nobody called. Which, from what I can tell, it hadn't been long since she had her stroke.
No, I know, but still.
But I know.
Like,
same.
Why would you not instantly
call?
Like, only child left. Like,
yeah,
it's very traumatic, and I feel like the dad. Like, I had a lot of issues with him, but he was very self-involved, and that really bothered me.
Absolutely, it was all about him. I do think that when Frankie came to the hospital and then immediately started taking care of her mom, it was a turning point for him, because he was like, "This isn't all about me. I do have one child left."
But it wasn't like, I mean, he did try to step up a little bit for her.
It still wasn't like a full turnaround. I feel like it wasn't
like a huge thing.
No, I don't.
Like, he got her a cottage and a car.
Yeah. So, and that was the other thing.
And that's him as a provider.
When she got home, he showed her the cottage that he was going to sell or tear down and build a bigger building. But her mom said, "No, Frankie needs her own place when she comes back." So she always knew she was going to come back. And
she like redid the whole place for her, bought her clothes, everything was stocked.
Everything.
I thought that was so sweet.
It was. I had more respect for Frankie's mom after that.
Yeah.
Not just because it was like a material thing, but just because she really cared about Frankie. And
I think she would have done more if it wasn't for her husband.
And I just think that she lived in a time where you listen to your husband, and I mean, that is the way
That's
it is. So Frankie stayed. She obviously left her life in Virginia, and she came back. She helped her mom get better. Her mom made a really great recovery. Everyone was like shocked that her recovery was so good, and she moved into the cottage. She got her car, and that's when she started working at the hospital again. And this job, she did get a surgical job, I believe it started out surgical right away. So things look like they're looking up. She meets Henry again, and they kind of start building a friendship. I believe that he came to her parents' party.
He did. Was it 4th of July?
Yes.
4th of July?
Because the way that they started like becoming friends again is they popped off fireworks and she hit the ground. And he immediately was like, "This girl has PTSD." Ended up walking her back to her cottage, kind of talking to her a little bit, and they started a friendship. And she knew, so he was a therapist? Some sort of therapist that worked with Vietnam veterans, and specifically with alcohol and PTSD problems.
But honestly, like, what surprised me was she was with him for a couple months.
Yeah.
And I feel like he didn't do or like try to recommend.
I agree.
Therapy, and
I think he obviously knew she had those problems, but he never said anything.
Why, like, as a professional, didn't you try to do something? Not even if you didn't want to do it, but like try to recommend a friend.
I was like searching, like trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe he's like, well, she has to change. Like, she has to come.
No, but he's a professional.
Exactly.
You know? Like, he knows better, and he literally treats.
This every day.
So I thought that was pretty weird.
Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another reason that I was like, maybe I don't really like this guy.
Well, and I just feel like, I don't know. I think he was a little bit too passive for her. I don't know. Because just when you think about it, like Jamie and Rye both
were so much
like leaders, not super passive. Obviously, they loved her, but like, I don't know.
They're their own person.
Yeah.
So.
And I just feel like he was super passive. So it in my heart, I knew it wasn't going to work out. And then she finds out she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm. So then they're going to get married.
Yeah.
And leading up to that day, she is watching TV, and Barb and Ethel are home because, or not home, but to Frankie's home, because she's going to get married that weekend. So they're like helping her out, and like they're like talking about like what they're going to do as their girls' night for Bachelorette, and like this and that, and they're watching TV. And what comes up other than, but this whole time she's also been helping out the wives of the naval.
Yeah, she's been writing letters to free the prisoners. And I don't think that Barb and Ethel were there yet, because she sees it on the TV and immediately Barb calls and says, "Did you see?"
Oh.
So I think they ended up coming. They were coming anyways, but they caught an earlier flight.
Okay.
So she's watching the TV, watching the prisoners of war, and they announce that Rye was alive and back.
And immediately, I think the event was before the wedding, but immediately, I think it was soon. And so they go to that event where everyone is there clapping and they're coming down, and like obviously all the guys are like beaten up.
And she's on the tarmac.
Yeah. And she sees Rye, and he instantly like is like going to this woman with this kid.
I don't know if it says her age.
I don't know what.
But either way.
Point of the story is that he goes up to her and they're hugging and kissing, and she's like, he was married the whole time. He lied to her.
In this moment, was
so shocked. I was like, are you kidding me?
I don't even know. I'm pretty sure I had to like put my Kindle down and take a breath.
Kudos to Kristin Hannah, because I don't think I would have ever imagined something like so crazy. Like the whole book has been crazy, but like this twist was really like, I don't think I would have ever thought about it in a million years.
I honestly just thought, oh, he's dead. Like that's her.
Yeah,
that's her. All of her men died.
Or like even if he was like there, I was like, oh my gosh, he's alive. But did I think he had lied?
No, absolutely
100% not.
Absolutely not. Yeah. I was shocked to my core, and so obviously she's wrecked.
Yeah.
She goes home. She's pregnant. She had been thinking about, she had having these thoughts of what I'm gonna do.
Like she was
marrying Henry.
Yeah. And Barb and Ethel kind of convinced her to like go through with it up until like they're setting up like the chairs and stuff for the wedding, and she starts like hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
And they go to the hospital, and
so
she loses her baby.
And I feel like we can jump forward a little bit on
just
this part.
Just because she gets like, it's so much trauma that like, just like stuff that she's going through, and well, eventually she breaks things off with Henry.
Almost immediately. I think at the hospital.
Immediately she breaks things off with him, and she's just going through like all this depression by herself, and she really like gets a turning point, and
she ends up getting suspended from her job at the hospital because she's drunk, and I believe her mom and the pills. So her mom talks to her about how she lost a child before she had Finley. The child's name was Carol, something like that.
I don't remember.
It doesn't matter that much. But she gives her a locket, and one of the names is there, and then she said, you can put Finley, because she was going to name the little boy Finley, on the other side, and she was like, you can wear it all the time. Yeah. And then she gives her these pills, Valium. She gives her Valium and then another pill. So it's like a sleeping pill and then an energy pill. And she's like, these got me through.
But she calls him, what does she call him? Like
little helper. Mommy's little helper. Mm-hmm. That's what she calls him. And the thing is, when she gave them to her, she knew what they were. And she was like, oh yeah, housewives use, in her head, like in her nursing brain, she's like, housewives use these. But she started using them, heavily drinking. She had not only an alcohol problem, she got like a pill problem. She was able to get them refilled, no problem. Which I think that
was an issue.
Yeah, obviously, like there was several issues that have come to light at this point with this time period, and like how they treated women and women's mental health. And so she she's drunk and on pills. She gets called in.
This is when she wrecks her car. It's after this, because that's when she almost
hits the guy. Yeah, but she totaled her bug first before she left. So this is the second time she's wrecked a car. But she just got caught this time.
She got it
because she almost hit somebody. Actually, She did hit him because she totaled his bike.
He was on a bike, yeah.
Yeah.
And because she goes to his house, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like super upset, and he's like, "Why would you try to endanger somebody like that?" And
And so she's obviously suspended from her job, drinking. Her parents are like, "What's wrong with you?"
Her nursing license got suspended.
Yeah. She's like, "What?" Everyone's like, "What's wrong with you?" And then she moves back in with her parents after the wreck, and her parents, I think it's within a couple of days, and it's not long, she ends up trying to kill herself. I don't think she necessarily meant to kill herself, but she took too many pills. Yeah, she took too many pills, she drank too much, and she walked into the ocean.
Was it Finn that she said she saw?
I think so.
And she wanted to go out to him, and her dad is like trying to save her. And it's so crazy that they knew where she went.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they never paid attention to her.
Yeah.
And like at this point they did.
Yeah. And so her dad ends up saving her, calling an ambulance, and they put her on a 72-hour hold.
Yeah.
In the psych ward. And Henry comes
and gets her
out and puts her into a facility her parents paid for, into his facility, but he's not her therapist. And she gets better.
And he has found a wife and like somebody who he cares about.
Yeah, he's getting married.
They're happy in this.
Yeah. So, and he pretty much just tells her like, "I'm always gonna love you and care about you."
I hope the best for you.
Yeah, and it was a very mature.
I just felt like I didn't really feel like sincerity from him, like kind of like love. Like I feel like he was kind of, I don't know, I just didn't feel like he was very like real about it. Like he actually wanted her to be. I mean, I know he wanted her to be better, but I just didn't feel like it was like coming out of a place of happiness.
I think he was sad. Yeah. I think he was just sad for her. And I think honestly, this is obviously just me in my opinion. It was never really brought up in the book. But I think he felt bad for not seeing the signs earlier, or for not doing something about what he saw. So I think that's kind of where I think he was just uncomfortable because he did. I do think he loved her, but I honestly think they were more best friends
than they were
lovers. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so what I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank. So from her graduating from this program, how did she go to Montana?
Well, we're missing her whole love affair.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, we totally missed that because that was before she tried to kill herself.
Yeah, that was before she tried to kill herself. We missed her whole love affair because after a while she is at the beach and she sees Rye.
Yes.
At her, like, it's like not her beach, but like the beach by her house that she's told Rye about.
Yes.
And he goes just because he wants to try and see her.
Yes.
And he takes his family and stuff, and she sees him that he's like not happy with his wife, that's being like not understanding with what he's been through, and obviously, you know, just like a bunch of stuff that she's kind of being ugly about. And so she follows them home.
Like a creep.
Yeah, I thought that was creepy. I mean, low-key, maybe I would have done the same. I mean, would you have done the same?
I mean, I definitely think
you're like,
there was unresolved. Yes, I would. Okay.
Okay, no, it's a yes or no question.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so obviously we would have both done the same, but I don't think I would have been as slow as she was. I think I would have been like more discreet about it.
Yeah, she literally crawled past his house, and then he turned and looked at her.
And they looked at each other for a little bit, and then she drove off, which was super. And then like, I guess he found her house.
Yes, he found her house.
But I feel like it's easy. Back in the day, it was easy to find.
Everybody posts their address everywhere.
Well, in the
Yellow
phone book.
Yeah. The phone book. There even phone books when you were alive.
Okay. When I was alive.
when you were little.
Because they would throw them on the,
But anyways, yeah, everyone's address was in the phone book, and so we found her, and they started this affair.
And he said that he was leaving his wife, this and that. They've had it for months, and she had first said no, and then eventually he kept coming back, and she eventually said yes to him. They were like good together for months, and he was like trying to leave his wife, this and that. Then they got engaged, and this and that, and she's like just working her shift at the hospital. And one day she's coming into work, and she sees these reporters there, and she's like, "Why are you guys here?" And they're like, "Oh, we're here because this veteran hero, his wife."
The general's wife's having a baby.
No, they said that the wife was here. They didn't say why.
Oh.
She goes, finds out where the wife is, and she's like, "Why is she on this floor?" She goes up to that floor, and sees her with the new baby boy. And that's when she runs into Rye. And
he was like, I was going to tell you. And then she realizes that they've had this huge affair while his wife's been pregnant.
And he lied that he hadn't been with her. He lied that he hadn't been with her, this and that. But he's a terrible, he obviously got horrible
person.
After that, I kind of gave up. I was like, I need a break. I like stopped reading. I was like, I
can't believe. I think I blacked that part. I mean, I remember it. Yeah. But I feel like I blacked it out because I was just so upset. Like, he just is terrible. And that was one thing that she said to Henry when she was in therapy later, is that Rye didn't have any problems after the war. And he's like, some people have. I mean, it's just different for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like he did, but it wasn't necessarily like PTSD. Yeah. I think it was more of his ego. Because he didn't come back the same, like he was limping and stuff, and I think that's why he did the whole affair, because he knew that she knew him like from the war and stuff like that, and she was more understanding than his wife was, so I think that's why she was doing that double life. Why he never left his wife, I don't know. If like he actually really loved her, or like did he just never love her?
I think Rye also was big into like his appearance, in my opinion, just the way that he carried himself.
And so maybe that's why.
And so he's like, I'm not getting divorced like that. You know, I'm not leaving my wife and children.
So I think he, honestly, for me, I think the whole book, his part was just like a lie.
It was a whole lie.
Like after that, I was like,
and I just am so upset because I loved him so much. He made me love him so much. He lied to me. He lied to me.
Well, like honestly, that second time, I was like, wow. Yeah. I didn't think she was ever gonna be happy. I thought she was gonna end up dying.
I did too. I really thought she was. I was like, Kristen's about to make this lady commit suicide at the end of this book.
The fact that she only committed suicide once.
Or tried, yeah.
That's crazy because she went through so much drama, like
so much. Yeah, and I think actually that was her breaking point. Was when
that was
Ryan had her baby, or had his baby, and then I think right after that is when she got crashed and suspended
and all that.
The spiral.
And eventually, Ethel and Barb came, and they came and took her, and she went back to wherever. And then after that, she ended up in Nebraska, or
it was Montana. I'm pretty sure. But was it because they road tripped to a?
Well, she was with them for a while, and she was ready to leave, but she didn't want to go back home. And so remember, they just were like, let's just drive. So they just kept driving, and they would take turns just as how they wanted until they found a spot. And they drove by Montana, and she's like,
and she saw the acreage for sale with a house, and she'd already fixed a house once, so she could do it again.
And that's where she got her place, and they fixed it up,
and Barb had moved to Chicago at this point, so she was closer to Barb.
Somebody.
Yeah.
Barb?
Yes, Barb had found somebody, a man with two boys.
Yeah, and they ended up getting married, and Ethel already had 2 kids.
Yeah, 2 kids at the time. Yeah. She got married to the guy she'd started dating after the war. I mean, everyone was kind of finding their place.
I think wasn't it her sweetheart, though?
Yes.
Like, they had already been
they'd been together.
Yeah. And so, eventually she turned her ranch into, like, where women can go and, like, find themselves again and, like, heal together.
Like a refuge. And it wasn't just for nurses in the war. It was for just women in general.
Just women in general. And I thought,
and that was really great. And I wish we would have heard a little bit more
about it. Yeah.
But she'd really just found her place, and she started counseling other women just through their problems and through their alcoholic, tendencies.
Any issues.
And then she gets a letter. Was it?
Well, it was for the fallen, like this monument.
Yeah, it was for the Vietnam monument. That's right.
And so she goes. Her, Barb, and Ethel, like they all go. Her mom and dad, who they had said they weren't going, actually showed up, and for Finn and this and that, and she's going through there. And who does she see?
Well, she goes to find Finley's name on the wall.
She does.
And then she hears a voice. And it's Jamie. Just so you know.
And like it just ends with like them finding each other, and like he's been divorced for years.
Yeah. He has 2 kids. He's like honest. He's like, we tried to make it work. We had another baby. She's 9.
But it didn't.
Love her.
But what was her name?
It was her name. Her name was Frankie.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Frances or something.
Frances. So Frankie. Yeah. Yeah. He named her after her. Which
Which I think is crazy because if I was his wife and I found that shit out, I would have lost my shit.
So that's the thing. You know.
I know she would have known.
Well, but you know, Frankie and Jamie ended up getting married. Well, in my heart, they did.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Like 100%.
So, you know, your stepmom's name's Frankie. They knew each other in the war. Your name's Frances, just like her. Like
that had to cause some drama. There's no way that didn't cause drama. Like I know, like after all she went through, she was not gonna have just an easy, happy ever after.
Absolutely not. But yeah, she finally found Jamie, and I really didn't think he was gonna be in game. I didn't.
Really? I thought he was dead. So
I was like, oh,
but when I read
dead.
that, I was like, wow. I think it took me a minute to like actually be happy for them, just because like there was so much like to go through with Rye that I was still kind of hung up on it.
I was too, and I had such a hard time. But then you know when you think of after you finish this book and you think about it, Jamie was always honest.
Yeah, he was, and I mean I really liked him from the start.
He never made her false promises.
No, he didn't.
And so it makes sense.
And I really liked him like as a surgeon.
For sure. It was just so good. Like, 5
out of 5. If you haven't read this book, if you didn't hear all the spoilers,
it'll make you feel
go ahead and read it again.
And honestly, all I had heard was that one of the men lies, and he's actually married, and one of them dies.
You had heard that already.
I had heard it, and I thought it was a spoiler, but I truly thought Jamie was the one that lied, because we found out in the beginning that he was married, so I was like, oh, okay, there you go. And then Rye died, so I was like, oh, there it is.
Well, I had heard nothing, and I think my favorite thing about reading is going into books and not knowing anything about them, because I get to discover it for myself.
Yeah, and I'd only heard those things, like, on accident on TikTok, like, you know. But, yeah, and honestly, I thought it would be a spoiler, but it wasn't.
Such a good book.
But, such a good book. We are so excited to talk about Not in Love by Allie Hazelwood next week, and we will see you then.
Bye.
Bye.